Yeah, yeah, yeah. Show me some. Show me some. Show me some. Show me some. Hey, show me some. Show me some. Show me some.
Welcome all to the NewCrown podcast. We're back with another part, part two with my good friend Benny Mestizo, or his real name Kevin Benitez. There's also
Yeah.
there was a question, as a question I also wanted to ask. Where'd you get the name Benny Mestizo?
Benny Mestizo is the it started from I got the nickname Benny first when I was in high school. It was a weird thing because like it stems from Benitez, so from my last name, and someone I forgot, I think it was in gym class, just like shortened it to just because a lot of people call me Benitez, like they call me by my last name.
Yeah.
And one person just shortened it to Benny, and the next day the whole school was calling me Benny. I was like, what the fuck happened? Like it spread so fast that like I don't even know what happened. So like it started from that, and then like well, being mestizo myself, being half Filipino and half white, I think it naturally came. And some people before the Benny Mestizo thing came out, some people were saying, "Oh, like Benny Blanco from the Bronx," and everything. So like, it was like it kind of became like a natural progression into Benny Mestizo over the years. And the first time I said it, it kind of sounded cool, and it sounded like an actual name. Like a lot of people to this day still think it's my actual name. So I'm like, okay, I just roll with it. Like it just sounds it does sound like an actual name.
It sounds like an artist name.
Yeah.
It sounds like an artist name. It's just kind of cool. I thought it was at first it was like an anagram or something of your name. I don't know if you had like a middle name. So you kind of like, most people do that. They kind of change their names around to make it more fancy. But no, honestly, it's quite interesting how like when people find an artist name, they usually it's just a nickname that someone gave them.
Yeah, they just roll with it, and
unless you're Childish Gambino, where you actually like roll to find random names.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, because last episode we talked about the music industry, but now I want to focus more on the actual TV and sort of like behind the scenes of that. So first of all, how did like what is like a TV show workflow like? Is it kind of like they send you a bunch of episodes one time and you just do it one shot, or is it like
so it depends. I work a lot in reality TV.
Okay.
So how it works is that it depends. For a show like Occupation Double, where it's shot 3 weeks. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 3 weeks, 2.5 to 3 weeks before it's aired. I'll get them one at a time, and since I'm the last step, since mixing and color correction are the last two steps before the
release.
Before the release, I'll really get them, but that depends. Ideally, like maybe like 5 days before it's on air. But that depends. But usually it's about that amount of time. And when we're looking at a show like Survivor, it's a little longer. I forgot like how much longer in advance they shoot it. But it's a really different workflow, and I was actually talking about that. I got to link up with the people at Hit Productions in Manila. Shout out to Hit Productions. They're the biggest audio post-production company in the Philippines. They work with Netflix and Disney. They do a lot of dubbing in Tagalog for Disney and Netflix.
Oh, really?
And it's huge. They have an Atmos room, and because when they do the dubbing, they have to redo everything in Atmos.
Yeah.
And they had like incredible facilities, and we compared workflows a lot.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff that they were doing that I found super impressive, and we were comparing it to and they were asking me questions about reality TV, how different it was, and reality TV is just because you have to work fast because you
Are
don't
you the
have a
only
lot of
one?
time.
Are you the only one, or you have multiple different audio technicians in
Oh,
terms of
I'm
mixing?
the only one for OD. There's only one episode per week that I don't do,
Okay.
which is like the OD Extra that they call. It's basically after the Sunday episode. There's always like an extra 1 hour of content, which is usually like behind the scenes stuff mixed with like stuff that wasn't aired during the week, little snippets and stuff like that. Um, which I'm the wait, when is this gonna be released?
It's gonna be probably in 3 weeks, so
Okay,
probably November.
so
November.
by the time this comes out, I'll have been on TV because like they shot a little like behind the scenes for post production, and
Nice. So
yeah,
send me the link. Send me the link. So we'll
yeah,
put it. We'll put it in the description when it
for
comes
sure,
out. That was sick.
for sure.
So, so yeah,
Yeah,
for Keep It on Dude, especially because like isn't it like a season thing? It's a seasonal
yeah,
thing, right?
yeah.
So
It's a seasonal thing.
so do you guys have like obviously there's I don't know how like the actual workflow during like the off season works. Are you doing like are you starting like the production or rather the I guess the mixing before the actual sort of season starts, if you will? So like
Well,
they shoot
there's stuff.
summer and like the
There's stuff that you have to mix before the season starts. Usually, it's just like the portrait of they call them the portrait. So it's like the 1 minute video, like introduction videos of all the
okay.
contestant.
Okay.
It's also what ties into that is that the world of reality TV in general is a very secretive world. They make you sign NDAs
Yeah.
because they don't want stuff to leak. And you don't understand the importance of that until you are a part of a team where then you realize like it's also everyone's job that's on the line. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like these
Yeah.
people have families. These people, it's like well, in my case, I can't speak for anyone else, obviously, but uh, you take stuff like that seriously when it comes to like it's really everyone's jobs that are on the
Yeah,
line.
you
And
kind of your job affects other people's jobs, and it's
Mhm.
also if you yeah, I get that. How do you manage the whole thing? Because like I'm guessing, a workload for a series that comes like it airs every week, no? Is it or is it like a binge?
Yeah, so it airs. The regular episodes are from Monday to Thursday.
Okay.
And then there's a live episode, which they recap the week, and they'll have
Oh
like
wow.
guests. Let's say the guest that was eliminated the Sunday before
Yeah.
will be live on air with
On the
other guests to talk about their experience during the season. So I don't mix the live one obviously because it's live.
But yeah, like how do you like manage those workflows? 'Cause, like there must be a lot of. I mean, even if you don't do one other episode, like it's
And
still a lot,
well, it's stressful because well, you kind of have to, how can I say this? You have to be able to gauge your standards, I guess.
Okay.
Because especially at the beginning of the season, like as far as the regular season goes, it's often very similar. Like so there's 4 regular 30-minute episodes Monday to Thursday, and then there's a 90-minute episode on Sundays. And as far as how these go, it's pretty standard. They have a weekly trip that like one selected guy, one selected girl goes on a trip, and stuff like that. So you already know, okay, I'm gonna have a trip to mix on Sunday. Then they have like a party at night that you have to mix, and then so you kind of know what to expect. But sometimes the management aspect of it, of managing your time, is more like, okay, I know, especially at the beginning of the season, if there's delays, you have to catch up on those delays. And so you have to be able to say, okay, now I'm going to manage what I feel like is acceptable. And there's things that I would have spent more time perfecting to make it sound better. that I'm now gonna be okay with it just being acceptable.
Yeah, because you can't be a perfectionist. Cause
Exactly.
That's like
It's being a perfectionist is the worst thing to mix
yeah.
reality TV.
But that's the thing, because like
Yeah.
you don't want to be a perfectionist, but you don't want to be too lax either, because you want the actual product, the end product, to actually be good and sound, actually good. So like I'm wondering, because especially when you're doing, I'm guessing it's very similar to Love Island. I don't know if you watch
Yes,
Love Island.
it's
Yes.
very similar. Yes.
So yeah, if you like, there's different, there's, I don't know if you guys have villas and whatnot, but you have like different camera angles, you have different shots. Obviously you still want to keep your creative aspect to it. You put a lot of your own creative input in it, or you kind of very
It's
mundane?
more, my creative input is more like, if let's say there's like a dramatic scene and like the music is very dramatic behind it, I want to have a good dynamic between what's happening on screen, and but also letting dialogue pass. So a lot of like writing the volume of your music, because one thing that's really important about when you're mixing television is that dialogue always comes first.
Yeah.
Dialogue always comes first. But you want to find ways to make the emotion cut through when it's like a dramatic scene, or a scene where the music is super important. And you want to keep it like really dynamic, and really make it sound natural, so it doesn't sound like it's like music ducking.
Exactly.
You really want to, you don't want to hear,
blend.
exactly, you don't want to hear those fades. You have to feel the music going up and down without hearing the volume go up and down, if that makes sense.
Do you guys have like multiple drafts throughout the weeks, for like, or you just kind of like, they trust you to?
Well, they have, let's say, in terms of editing, they have different drafts, because they have to have approval from the directors. They have to have approval from the also from Nouveau, from the
studios and the
no the what do you call that, from the station itself.
the broadcasters themselves.
Yeah, from the broadcasters. They had to have approval from them. So there's a bunch of, and then when it comes to other franchises, because Occupation Double is the company that hires me, called Production J. That's their product. But when it comes to a product like Survivor, then you also add another layer of approvals from Banijay, or I might be mispronouncing the name of the company, but the company that owns Survivor. They also want to make sure that it, and it's completely normal, they want to make sure that it also stays as close as possible to that it really feels like a Survivor show, like Survivor US, or like any other
because you incorporate also that
Survivor.
you also incorporate the actual, because there's all the music, the dialogue, like you talked about earlier, but also the ambient sounds, like a lot of like the footsteps or whatnot. So how, like, obviously with television is very much it's kind of a different sound design. It's not like in film where there's a lot of like it's a lot of production in it. So I'm like, how do you, what was it like? How do you kind of like, do you give yourself a sort of a cheat sheet, if you will, to like sort of see what levels need to be at what, or you kind of like wing it every single time?
By now I'm used to it, so I right now I go by ear. But what's important when you're mixing is that you're not mixing for the public's ears, you're mixing for the director's ears.
Gotcha.
Because the director knows where they're going.
Okay. So you trust fully on the director's vision.
Exactly. Plus the person that you answer to as a mixer is the director.
Yeah.
So if the director's happy, then you know what I mean, that's perfect. After that, if they get news from the broadcaster that, let's say, like this, people are complaining that the music is too loud, you can't hear dialogue and stuff like that, then we'll look at it. But what I always want to make sure when I start a season, especially if it's with a director that I have never worked with, make sure that they're happy at day one. Because after that, they like that's how you gain their trust, and if they trust you, approvals are a lot easier after that. Sometimes I'm not sure, and like I'll ask the director, and I'm really happy because I have a very good working relationship with the directors of both Survivor Quebec and Occupation Double, where sometimes I'll ask them a question, hey, what do you like? What do you think about this scene? Like, do you see, like, let's say the sound effects being more front, or when it, like, or like any like details like that? And of course they'll look at it with me or listen to it with me, and they'll be like, that's actually a really good question. Actually, and they're like, I trust your gut, So like,
Yeah, so okay,
that's the best compliment you can get as a TV mixer. And also you do have to listen to a lot of references. A good example is when I did, because the thing with Survivor Quebec was that last season Survivor Quebec was the first season of Survivor Quebec. So there was no priors. I couldn't speak to last year's mixer to get some cues because it was something brand new. And I was mixing like the first few weeks, and then I rewatched a lot of Survivor US episodes, and I was looking at that part where they go to the voting booths to eliminate one contestant, and the way that the music was a lot more present, and there was a lot more riding the volume, and because even by TV standards, the music was pretty loud. And I looked at it with the director, and I was like, "What do you think?" He's like, "Yeah, go for it." But no one told me to do that. It was just like
very open communication.
Yeah,
open
exactly.
Okay, that's good.
Exactly.
So what do you think the biggest difference is between mixing TV and mixing music, for example?
It's so different. You can't see it as the same thing in two different mediums. You kind of have to see it as two completely different art forms, but you're just using the same tools.
Yeah.
The tools are the same. Mixing music, every single element is interconnected. It's kind of the same for TV too, but in TV, there's kind of like a cheat sheet. You have to make sure that your dialogue is clear. That's the main thing you care about. And you also have to respect the loudness levels.
Okay.
That one's a really important one, because how loudness levels work is it's your average loudness level.
Okay.
So from start to finish, you have to be
within a range.
Within at minus 24 dBs LKFS with a margin of more or less 1 dB.
So basic TV standards essentially. Like
exactly.
Same way like my documentary was kind of like mixed, and it was was okay, I gotcha.
So that's the hard part when you start mixing.
Okay.
Is finding ways to like keeping those levels
within.
But the thing is that when you do a series like OD or like Survivor, where you got so many episodes, you build a template, and once you know that template, it's always more or less recorded at the same levels. And your theme song, once you've got it set, you just reload the same theme song from every from, you know what I mean? Even now, actually, I've got the theme song that's already in my template.
Okay.
So this way, nothing moves. I'm just like, if the cold intro is a little longer, and I'll just like
drag it a little longer.
Yeah, I'll drag it to where what they send me is, and I won't even use the intro music that they put in the AAF when they send me the files. Gotcha. Once they're done with editing. So it's Yeah, that's templates are super important, super important when you're doing the same thing for like 12 weeks, and
I
it's
feel like
yeah.
it's a lot easier for TV shows, especially because you have multiple episodes, because you're kind of practicing the same thing. So eventually, it's just kind of like routine work. You know what I mean? It's not like
Oh yeah, I'm on like autopilot now.
So,
I'm on yeah.
but is there like a preference between directors? Because I'm guessing there's different directors per episode, or is it the same director per episode?
Well, they have like a lead director.
Okay, gotcha.
That's like they'll have a lead director, and then they'll have like directors that are like assemblers slash directors, where those are basically they'll take the editing done by different editors.
Okay.
So let's say one editor is supposed to edit the let's say they have like a party, and that person's editing the party, and then this other person is editing the trip, and then they take all those edited things, and then there's a director that's like an assembly where in what do you call that, in Premiere they'll put everything together and make sure that that respects the exact length and that the whole thing flows together.
Yeah.
And they always have meetings and approvals with the lead director.
Okay.
And he'll make the, you know what I mean, like
and that lead director is what, the whole season, or is it like
so she's a post-production director where she'll be like there at the beginning of the season, because all those reality shows, whether it's Occupational Doer Survivor, it's elsewhere, right? It's a destination show. So I know she was there, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for like the first episode where it's like a red carpet, and like that's where they like really introduce the contestants, and they pick. Like this year, for this season, it was the girls that there was, I think, 8 girls and 12 guys, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. Because all I know is that 4 guys got eliminated at the red carpet. So they have like a special episode when it's like the first real episode where they pick who the final contestants are going to be. And if I'm not mistaken, she was there for that. But the process for reality TV is that they have like a lead post-production director that really like
assembles the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And makes sure that like the direction is followed by the whole team.
Okay, gotcha. Because I'm guessing with film, I mean, it's very straightforward. You have one director usually.
Yeah.
You know, unless it's special case, someone leaves or whatnot. But like usually it's one director. So with that vision, you're with that director the entire time, so you know exactly what that person wants and how that person works. It's very easy to kind of like communicate. Whereas like usually episodes or TV series in general usually have different directors directing those episodes.
Yeah, per episode. And also the difference with reality TV is that production and post-production are happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Because while production is filming, let's say week 7,
you're editing.
We're doing, you know what I mean? Like editing weeks 5 and 6 at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's also a very like different aspect when it comes to reality TV versus not even like just between TV and film. It's really a difference between reality TV and everything else.
Okay.
Like I've mixed documentaries where it's also the same thing as in film, where it's one director that does everything. So it's the same director that did everything in terms of you know what I mean, like the director on set filming and everything, like that I'm having approval sessions with as concerning the mix. So it's that's the whole concept of like a post-production director.
Gotcha.
Is pretty unique to reality TV.
Gotcha. Now this is a question for me. Now this next question is very much for me because I want to learn a lot more about the actual post-production element of audio. What is the difference between mixing and mastering?
So mastering is a process that doesn't really exist in post-production as far um
Look, for audio,
as
for TV, I'm guessing not much, but like,
yeah, because mastering as far as because when I as a music mixer, I do mixing and mastering, and the process of mastering is so the process of mixing is making every um is making is playing with every single part, every single track. Let's say you've got like guitars,
yeah,
bass,
yeah,
keys, vocals, everything, and making everything sound as good as possible, both individually and together.
together, yeah.
And the mastering process is making your final mix be as loud as possible without it distorting in any ways,
Okay,
and also make it that it's listenable in different mediums.
okay,
So that's the job of mastering. The only thing I can compare to the mastering stage in television is I do have it's kind of done at the same time,
okay,
because
okay,
I do
gotcha.
have on my master bus in Pro Tools when I'm mixing TV, I have limiters, I have compression, I have all those
Okay,
things that
yeah,
kind of makes your whole
ensemble track kind of.
exactly
Oh,
it stabilizes
okay,
the dynamics of your complete product
okay,
in a way that makes it less dynamic volume wise and easier to um kind of like easier to respect the loudness standards
okay,
that I was talking about earlier.
okay. Oh, in terms of loudness sounds, you very much rely on the levels, not on like what you're hearing, right?
Yeah, I have like because the golden rules is usually especially in music is mixed with your eyes, not with your mixed with your ears, not with
Because
your
not your
eyes.
eyes, yeah,
But when you're mixing TV, like that loudness meter is one of the only things that is there all the time, and you always have to pay attention to it.
yeah.
Um, so that is a is I want to say it's as important as dialogue. Earlier I said like dialogue is
Okay,
king.
yeah.
Dialogue is the most important thing.
Loudest meters are important.
Loudness, yeah. Because like as good as your mix is, if it doesn't respect loudness standards, you're gonna get flagged at quality control, and like that's not a good look, and it makes everyone stressed out. And that's
Yeah,
also the thing, is that you want to make sure when you're a TV mixer, you want to reassure everyone,
yeah.
because audio is something that they're not that used to.
Hmm.
Like when I work on one of these reality shows, they have like 10 to 15 video editors in one room, but
Yeah.
I'm the only mixer. And so if there's a major problem like that coming back from quality control from the broadcaster, they're gonna panic.
Yeah,
And that's one thing you really don't want to happen, is make them panic, because they don't, well, not obviously not everyone, but like it's something that's generally less, that they're less comfortable with.
okay.
They're less comfortable with audio than they are with video.
Yeah. I mean, that's why
Um,
it's very much a
yeah,
niche thing that's very like complex. And
very.
so like do you listen to this is a good thing, because like usually when you mix music, you kind of like try and test it out with different headphones and speakers and whatnot to make sure everything sounds good. Do you do the same thing with TV? Because I know you have barely any time,
Yes
but
and no. So the thing with television is that TV in Canada has to be mixed in 5.1.
yeah, okay,
So it has to be mixed in surround. But when it comes to reality TV and documentary, which are the two main things that I do, it's pretty standard. Like it's not like fiction where in fiction, if you have a character that's on that's on screen, then that character's voice has to be in the center channel.
Okay.
But if you have someone behind the camera, let's say there's someone behind the camera slightly on the right, then you have to pan that character. You don't have those obligations. Like all in reality TV and documentary, like all your dialogue is in the center.
Yeah.
And all your music is there's no music in the center unless it's like an old footage.
Okay, yeah.
Let's say, and there's like music in the footage. Obviously, there's going to be some music in the center, but other than that, your music is. I always put my music the same panning in terms of like 80% in the front, 20% in the back. Okay. And after that, you got the LFE for the sub, which is that itself. I barely put anything because people at home have bass. People that do have a 5.1 system have bass management.
Yeah.
So I'm not adding anything in the LFE in the lower frequency enhanced channel because they're just gonna have too much bass at home because people have bass management. So all the bass that's supposed to go, let's say people would normally hear in the speakers go to the sub anyway. So unless there's like specific things, I barely use that. And what a lot of people, I make sure like I check my mix in 5.1, but I mix in stereo because the overwhelming majority of people that are watching this show are hearing it in stereo. How many people do you know have a 5.1 setup at home?
That's the thing, because like, especially when you have like many channels, like for one audio clip, you're kind of like you want to make it immersive, but you also don't want to put too much time into thinking what do I put into one thing. So obviously, you're talking prior about templates, but when you first started, was there like a template that was already pre-made for you? You kind of like figured out by hand. Like
I was lucky. because so this is how I got into. In part one, I spoke a little bit about how I got into mixing TV shows, but the guy that I learned from, I just sat in a few sessions and watched him mix. He gave me his template. And over time, I changed it a little bit, but it's perfect because it's a template where my 5.1 mix and my stereo mix sound almost identical.
Okay.
Like I basically, even if I mix in stereo, when I say I mix in stereo, that's not true. I mix in 5.1, but I play it back. I listen to it in stereo. So that's why I'll double check my 5.1 once in a while, but overall it sounds the same because when you send the mix to a broadcaster, you send a 5.1 mix and a stereo mix, but they only use the 5.1 mix.
Okay.
And what people listen to when they watch it is actually a down mix of the 5.1 mix in stereo.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So that's why I mix in 5.1, but I listen to it in stereo. I listen to the down mix of that.
Okay. So you listen to it how like the audience
exactly
would listen to it. Okay,
exactly.
Gotcha.
But if I was mixing fiction and stuff, I'd have a completely different process.
Would you? That's another question I was going to ask. Would you because now you've done reality TV? Would you want to progress and evolve into a different genre? Say like movies, film, like I don't know, like a more bigger project, if you will.
I would love to try it. The issue with that is when you've reached a certain level and I had that problem actually when I started mixing TV shows. I had reached a certain level in music that like it's my career, right? Like that I'm a professional, meaning that it's my profession. That's what I pay my bills with.
Yeah.
You go from like a level where you're pretty advanced to feeling like a newbie.
Yeah. I mean,
It's such a weird feeling, and you feel so much pressure because you
Yeah.
know how good some people are at it.
yeah.
And I've done it with going from music to reality TV and documentary, but to do it again to fiction, I would do it if the right opportunity came.
Yeah. I mean,
Meaning that it would have to be a project where the deadlines aren't insane, and that I wouldn't have any other project.
Mhm. Say A24 decides to look for for an audio mixer, and there's an opportunity to be taken here. Would you consider it?
I would definitely consider it.
Especially with like, I mean, everything everywhere all at once. The mixing was so beautiful. Like when you listen to it, it's just
the pressure. The bigger the projects are, the more mentally taxing it is.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But something that's, it helps you later on, because as you evolve, like, I mean, it's great to master one thing, but like eventually, I don't know if for you, but like for me, when I do something, it kind of gets repetitive, it gets a little boring, and I want to like tackle new challenges. So yes, sure, it's incredibly scary, but at the same time, it's the awesome payoff at the end, because once you like mastered that, you're like, well, I mean, look how far I've gone, for over the years.
And I think the fact that I learned how to adapt would make me a good candidate to be able to cross over into something else. But when you are at a certain level in your career, it becomes scarier to make the jump.
Yeah,
because like
the stakes are high,
man. Ignorance is bliss, man. When you don't know how good like these people are at their jobs, you're like, I can do it. But then you realize how good these people are, and you're like, damn, like I don't want to look stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want, because as big as the payoff can be, like let's say you mix an A24 film and all the movies before, like, you know what I mean, like Everything Everywhere All at Once had like praises, and then yours sucked. Man, like that's like the worst thing for your career.
Big shot at the ego. I mean,
yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, it's a learning curve. I mean, everyone. I mean, to be fair, like every single film in the beginning, or film director, or anyone that's tackling the arts, especially, they try things out. And so, especially when it comes to film, because you're not kind of reliant on a particular, like, curriculum, if you will, or like very like strict guidelines. You're allowed to kind of like express yourself in a more authentic way. I feel like it gives you more freedom, if you will. Like, I mean, there's a lot of like films that are shot in a non-traditional way, and they see it as like, it's as something that's more, provocative, or like actually more unique, and gives it more of that little spice that other films may not give. So I don't know, like, especially with like those films, A24 films are very, very niche and very, very avant-garde, if you will.
Yeah. And the thing too, and I'm thinking about what you just said and what I said right before, to when you start experimenting in how you do your art, you have to have solid foundations. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be really good at the basics in order for these more experimental decisions pay off well.
Yeah.
And one thing too that, like I said, and I'm reflecting back on this, and I don't even have the full answer, because like I'm at a point in my career where like I'm 35. I'm gonna turn 36 in December, where
You're in your
you know,
prime.
like
You're in your prime.
well, I'm in not only am I like not I don't know if I'm in my prime, but you know, like failing. We were talking about failing and having it being a hit to your ego. I've failed a lot earlier in my career, and those when you fail at something, you're like, man, never again. And that's what makes you learn and really grow.
Yeah.
But once you've done that growth,
You want
like
to go through it again? You don't want to go through
exactly.
it again?
I think that's why it's a little scarier. Whereas in like you're like, oh, and also like, do I like I've built my foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, do I want to get creative and go off the beaten path in what I'm doing right now, or do I want to go work on some other foundations for something else?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's also like it's so crazy because like you asked me these questions and
you're reflecting on it for real.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, like that's a really good question. And I'm like, I don't know the full answer. I guess this is my answer. You know what I mean? Like,
what's your dream project?
Yeah.
What's your dream project you want to work on per se? If there's an opportunity that allows you to kind of tackle, would you say in TV show first of all, and would you be open to like bigger production TV shows?
Or would a music related
okay, gotcha.
TV show.
Okay,
kind of like I mean, kind of like The Voice, but not necessarily. I would like it to be something new.
Okay.
But the thing is that I would love to have. Okay, so this would be my dream project, kind of like but the thing is, I wouldn't want to just be a mixer for the show itself, because a lot of those shows are live, and the day-to-day aspect of those shows is very similar to what I'm already doing, but something where I would have more of a creative role. Would be my dream project as far as being a TV mixer, where like the kind of project that would combine the two things, that my two careers basically.
Would you do musicals? Would you do musicals? Like
musicals is hard because that's live. I barely do any live gigs, and when I do live gigs, like I'll say yes to a few people. There's actually like a shortage in terms of live sound engineers right now, and I do it, and I've done it throughout my career a little bit here and there because it keeps me on my toes. It's so easy to just like, and when you're making music or post production, to just kick back and just be comfortable. But when you're doing live, it has to. If there's a problem, it has to be solved now, because like you can't afford and it's so taxing on the body. Like after I do a live gig, I get home and I just want to go to bed right away because like I'm not used to that stress of like, and usually when I do live shows, everything that could go wrong usually does go wrong.
Yep.
Throughout the day, and it's just like, so that's the only reasons why I don't think I would want to do musicals. And it's funny because I got curious recently about how they mix musicals live, and it looks like the most insane live gig. Like literally they have, because I'm like, there's so many people that are mic'd up. How do they even manage that? And it's usually just one like mixer, and they just go like they have the script in front and who goes when, and they just like write the mixers of everyone in real time. And I'm like, this is like,
and if someone misses their line or they change the line, it's like,
so insane. Yeah, exactly. It's so insane. It looks like the most insane thing, that and like live mixing sports. Well, even that live mixing sports doesn't look as bad. I think that would come in number 2. but like live mixing musicals looks
A concert,
absolutely insane.
a concert too. A concert. Would you?
A
Would you?
concert is pretty steady. I've mixed concerts, obviously not big scale concerts.
Yeah.
How concerts work, and I'm guessing musicals too, but they have most of the concerts that I've worked on. You're two people. You've got one FOH, so front of house, who mixes for the room, and one mixer that mixes the like the monitoring for the performers. So like
Okay.
the monitors on stage, if they have in-ear monitors and stuff like that, they each have an individual mix. So usually like for concerts, it's pretty steady. It's harder when it's like a variety show where you've got like a bunch of different performers.
Yeah.
And they all use the same mic, especially when they all use the same mic, because no one sounds the same. So you kind of like have to write it. I did a gig last summer where it was a concert for a for a singing school for autistic kids and kids that would have other
Impaired.
So they shared, I think they had like two or three lead vocal mics, but they would just share one after the other.
Pass it on to each other. Okay.
Pass it on, and that was so hard. That was so hard because they do not all sing at the same level. So you're just writing your faders. Well, and then you're not sure. And then if there's like 20 of them on stage, they could have passed the mic to someone behind, and then you don't know. Is it vocal mic 1? Is it vocal mic 2? You know what I mean? Like,
how do you EQ it? How do you EQ that? Like,
you have to EQ. You have to do a basic EQ. You can't go too specific. It's really broad strokes.
Yeah, someone sings baritone, the other one sings alto. Like, how do you?
No, exactly. You have to do something that kind of fits everyone. You cut the lows at around 100, dip a little bit in the low mids because like they're SM58, so you know there's going to be a little boomy. Brighten the top a little bit. So your EQ has to be really basic. Your EQ really has to be like basic, like everyone sounds good enough.
Okay.
Because you can't be like,
you can't be specific to one. Yeah, obviously.
There's 30 of them, and they just pass the mics around. So like that becomes like, that's just like in when you mix reality TV, you have to get to a point where you have to stop being a perfectionist. And I even say to go even deeper on that, to a certain extent, being a perfectionist, if you're a perfectionist, you have to learn how to let go.
Okay.
You have to learn how to let go, because I've seen a lot of perfectionists, even in music where you have time to be a perfectionist. I've seen a lot of perfectionists ruin their work. The thing is that when you're making music, and this is specific to music, less to post-production. It's your early demos and stuff like that, or even your early takes, and often even your first instincts are all emotional based. And that's what music is. Music is an emotional product. When you start being too perfectionist, you start being too cerebral. And you take a lot of the emotion out of it. And that's where being a perfectionist can be a bad thing. We already settled it. It's definitely a bad thing for when you are making reality TV, but it can also be a bad thing for when you're making music. But actually, no. Sorry, it's not a bad thing, but if you are one, you have to learn how to let go.
It's something that Metro Boomin was saying also, because in one of his interviews, I was listening to it. He was telling it's basically because a similar question was asked to him, and he was kind of explaining how a lot of the producers are very kind of like they're very nitpicky about the type of snares,
Mhm.
the rim shot. Is it gonna be an open clap? Is it gonna be like like the hi hats, all everything, and then they completely lose track of the overall
Yes,
song.
I 1000% agree with that statement. One
And
thousand percent.
it's like it's funny because like especially when you're early on when you're starting. Like, I don't remember when I was first starting producing because I kind of like I was composing my own films obviously.
Oh, nice. Your own
Yeah.
scores?
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
mainly for financial reasons, but also because I wanted to. I loved music, so I kind of wanted to do my own thing. I was
Yeah.
like, all right, let's try this out. So
Mhm.
I was really like very nitpick on like how the song would obviously complement the scene, but also like
Mhm.
every single sound had to sound a specific way, and overall, it kind of just I don't know, it didn't sound good in the end product. So I was kind of like, okay, this is weird because I'm really putting 100% in this, but
Mhm.
am I putting too much focus on the wrong thing here? What's going on? So I had to kind of like let go of a lot of things. Kind of just kind of said, oh, you know what, this will be the final product, and
Mhm.
we'll see what happens then. And it's kind of interesting because I think it was episode one. You were saying that zoom out.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
gonna
yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of a it's very very it's simple statement, but it's very much a very important one where
Mhm.
you kind of have to just let go and just trust that your attempts aren't complete failures, and
Yeah.
maybe later
Yeah.
on you
Yeah.
actually trust yourself to do the right thing, and you actually have
Mhm.
confidence in your own work. I'm curious though, would you compose a score for a movie, TV show slash scene?
I've done some scoring back in the days a little bit on some, like, I think two local movies and like one Russian movie
Okay.
back then. Um I'm not very good when it comes to like classical music scores,
Gotcha.
but I've done enough scoring that I could do it. Especially if we're talking about like music scoring that I'm more comfortable with, let's say more like
Urban hip
one.
hop.
Well, yes, urban. Like I can definitely score when it comes to like more urban and hip hop music, but also electronic music. One of my
Okay, good.
favorite scores of all time was the score for the Tron movie that
Okay, yeah,
Daft Punk made. That was insane. I don't
gotcha.
watch this movie. I listen to this
This movie.
movie. The score is I love the score, and that's I love like electronic music based scores. So uh and also we're going back to what I was saying earlier. I can do some like orchestral scoring, but
Mhm,
I know people that are so damn good at it
mhm,
that it doesn't put me in a place of confidence when I
gotcha.
make it, and that affects the final product
Yeah.
because I know how good some people are at this, that I'm like, when I'm making it, why am I even trying?
Why am I
When
here?
I
What's going?
know, you know what I mean, this and that person who are 10 times better than me. So it's like, so I'd rather work on a project that I know I can be as good as them, just in a different genre.
Yeah, the composer Ludwig Göransson, the one who did Community, but then he went transition into Black Panther. He did Creed.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so like because him, for example, he did Community, so he did like a TV show. He
yeah.
composed that. It's very it's fun. It's not like
Yeah.
it's very much a mix, obviously, because Charles Gambino also was his producer. So
Mhm.
when he did like Childish's albums, there was like a mix of like hip hop, but also like R&B. There's a bit of like pop in there. So it's interesting how, because I'm honestly curious how, especially since you are a producer yourself, like would you kind of tackle a unique project, kind of like what
Oh
he did
yeah,
with
I love it.
like
That I love it because the thing is that when you remember in the part one of our like
the
the
podcast?
episode one of the
Yeah,
podcast we did
yeah,
together, um, we were talking about like producers and like their signature.
yeah, yeah.
I think that relates to that question because um, there are some film scorers who don't have a signature who can work on very vastly different projects from one project to the other. But when you start doing stuff like that, there's a lot of research that goes into that.
Very
And
much,
I think for the research purposes, I'd be really excited to work on a project where it really would put me out of my comfort zone. But I would also, if that were the case, especially when you're scoring films like that, especially if it's a big budget film, is to also surround yourself with the right peoples.
Yeah.
Peoples, that was weird. With the right people that, surround yourself with the right people that will really have the skills that you don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
And really, like, if I'm not that great at scoring orchestral stuff and there's an orchestral part, then I have to hire someone that's really good.
Well, absolutely. It's a collaborative effort at the end of the day. So I mean, ultimately speaking, like, because I mean, I'm curious because, like, if you were to compose for a Filipino mix movie, and obviously you want to bring back, the culture, like, would you kind of incorporate the traditional,
Filipino definitely that tribal? I would love to do that, and what I would do, especially if it was a big budget thing, is go to as many regions in the Philippines. But also, if it was a project like that, I would want to make sure that something's in it for those people as well.
I mean, it would bring awareness to actually their real culture, because
yes, I think that is a very important part, because we're stigmatized. Oh man, that's a good question, because and it's a complicated thing, because you're right, like it would bring a lot of awareness to the real culture, especially when it comes to, because we're often seen as this like Catholic culture.
Yeah, very much.
A lot of us
very Americanized, kind of.
Very almost. Americanized and very
I think we're diluted from our
yes.
our
and
origins.
One thing that I find really heartbreaking about the Philippines is that in most countries, when you talk about indigenous people, you're talking about people who, whether they are culturally involved or culturally like active in their original traditions and everything, they're considered indigenous. You can have an indigenous person that lives in Toronto and Montreal and lives a very Western, modern Canadian lifestyle. And it's still going to be an indigenous person. In the Philippines, most of us are indigenous or part indigenous, but we're not considered indigenous, because in the Philippines, indigenous groups are the groups that preserved their culture.
The culture,
a lot of groups in places like Baguio, where like you go there and they're considered like indigenous groups, but the Tagalogs that have been in the region of Manila since like before the Spaniards came, we're not considered indigenous, because like we don't have our pre-colonial culture anymore. So but that it sucks, because like when you like zoom out, you know what I mean, like you most of us are indigenous. I think like there was a research before, a lot of people put like I think a lot less now, but back then a lot of people would like put a little Spanish flag, a Filipino flag, and a Spanish flag in their bio and say like, oh yeah, I'm mixed, I'm part Spanish. Like, chances are you're not. Like, my last name Benitez was fucking given, man. Like my family probably lived on B Street, and they go like, "Oh, you guys are Benitez now, and you guys are Benavides, and now C Street." You know what I mean? Like, so, like, you're right. I think working on a project that would involve like
Our roots, essentially.
our actual roots, it would be good to bring awareness to people. But also,
I mean, even to us, like
yeah,
a lot of people who we kind of celebrate, Filipino Heritage Month. We listen to like a lot of these TV shows that are native to the Philippines, but yet we're still not in tune with it. We're still diluted, if you will. There's like like
Mhm.
even the Filipino mainstream media kind of makes it more of American / telenovela style,
Mhm.
production, whereas there's not as many.
Yeah, man. Oh man, like I've had so many conversations with a lot of even like professionals in the industry in the Philippines, where it, that I find it heartbreaking, in and of itself. The and it's detrimental to a lot of people over there. Even like when you look at like the colorism and everything. And I remember when I went to the Philippines when I was like 18, it was for my dad's funeral. People were like saying, "Oh, you should stay here and become an actor." I'm like, why? I'm like, why? I'm like, you're gonna put me, who's half white, who looks very pale, on TV,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to act. I don't even know how to speak Tagalog. Like when you have actual actors over there that are actually really good at their jobs
Yeah.
and don't get as many opportunities because they're darker. Like it's the, you know what I mean? It's a very heartbreaking thing when you think about it at its
The fundamental
core.
point. It's very it's very much like it's very Americanized, if you will. Like if like there's a lot of even the we call that the artists, like they would put like makeup on to make him look a
Oh
certain way.
man, like it blew me away when I was there and I would see billboards. Like you hear about it when you're here, but like when you're there, it's even more in your face. Where like I'd see billboards for like whitening soap, and they had celebrities.
Yes.
Like, but they'd have celebrities. You know what those celebrities look like, and they're clearly photoshopped to look lighter. And I'm like, this is like, is this like a dystopian like movie where this is, you know what I mean? But like, and I think reconnecting with our roots would be would definitely be a good thing as far identity wise. But the reason why I was talking about the like economical aspect, and I wanted, if I were to work on a project like that, I would want to I would want, like, if we're sharing a culture, I want there to be something in it for, let's say, like I'm going to a bunch of indigenous groups and learning about their instruments. I want them to be an incentive financially for them too, because I also don't want to be a part of
The problem.
stealing culture.
Yeah, well, yeah. Also, like because a lot of them kind of exploit, like a lot of like the if you will the ones who are trying to market their stuff, they kind of exploit those people because they're if you will untouched and nobody knows about them. So like, oh, I've discovered something new to like put myself on the map. So I kind of like the what like Black Panther kind of did, kind of basically band everyone together and kind of actually represented tribes, even though it's very much Americanized and it's Disney and like it's a corporate film. It's very much they brought, I think, was it the cinemas back in like the first time in ever that they actually showed cinema film in Africa or something like that. So like it actually brought them a representation worldwide. So it's I feel like that could be a good thing in terms of
for sure. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So my hope, and it's funny we're talking about all this because like I've visited a few studios and stuff like that, and spoken to a lot of artists in the Philippines, and like, have you listened recently to some Filipino music?
Well, depends on what Filipino music you mean. Like modern day Filipino music,
Yeah, like more modern stuff.
like SB19 modern.
Well, yes, I wasn't thinking about them, but yes.
It's very
I'm
K-pop. It's
actually
very K-pop. Not
it's
gonna
very
lie.
K-pop. I would my suggestion when I talk to people and they want to listen to like modern Filipino music, man, the Philippines makes some of the best R&B music on the planet.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god. There's a playlist. Oh, what's it called? I think it's called Pinas Vibes or something like that. Or I don't think it's Pinoy Vibes. I think it's like Pinas Vibes. It's like a official Spotify playlist, and the R&B there is just like chef's kiss. Like there's a Canadian R&B playlist, and I was comparing it, and I was like, man, we make trash R&B here compared to the Philippines. Like they're on top of their game, and like the way I see it, and a lot of them are independent artists.
Yeah, yeah.
And like a lot of them, like, man, it's so funny because my main issue with OPM, with Filipino music in general, is when you listen to OPM from like the 70s and stuff like that, they were on par quality wise with what was coming out of the US or Europe or anywhere around the world. If you look back like 10 years ago, like the music was so subpar in terms of production. The singing was there, the talent was always there, but in terms of production value, you know what I mean, like production, it was so subpar. And now you're seeing independent artists like recording off like $100 mic in like their houses, like making better music than like the big companies in the Philippines make it. So that warms my heart. That really makes me excited. And hopefully, I know some of these artists now, like I was like calculating with their streaming numbers, some of them having the 100 million streams, and they're independent. I'm like, I'm calculating, I'm like, they're actually making in like 6 digits if they're like 100% independent.
To be fair, the Asian market is much bigger than the American markets. It's a lot easier to like. Even if we're not popping in the West, like globally, you'll still be popping. You know,
insane. Like if you look at just like, and I know a lot of artists want to like independent artists here. They're like, oh man, like if I can have a big hit in the US, I'm like, you know how much? Do you know how expensive it is to like make it in the US when like you can look. Let's say you could focus your all your promo to the Philippines, Indonesia. Indonesia has the 4th biggest population in the world. It's China, India. I always forget which one's first, which one's second between China and India.
China's
okay,
first,
so it's China, India, the US, and then Indonesia.
Yeah.
So Indonesia has the 4th biggest population in the world. Imagine you put the populations of take just like Southeast Asia. Don't even
alone
like
you could be
like
absolutely.
China's a different market. Japan's a completely different market. Korea, South Korea, forget about it. It's K-pop. So like, but let's say you take Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Singapore is also a very good market. You know, like Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, like Myanmar. Like let's say you take like those countries, and I'm sorry for the ones I'm forgetting, and you see that as one market, and you blow up there, like that's your whole career.
Yeah,
that can be your whole career. Like and
it's cheaper too.
Like like especially for an independent artist, and even not just for independent artists. Something I learned recently is that a lot of big North American record labels or even like European record labels, they'll bump their streaming promos for like a lot of streaming advertisement for their artists in Southeast Asia because they're first of all, there's a lot of people, a lot of young people that listen to music, that consume a lot of music, so they boost their numbers by having their music played more in Southeast Asia, and then that creates like, and then you
it creates an echo. It creates an echo where essentially it reaches America, and then like, oh look, I'm big there, so and
also like, and sometimes they won't even say, look, I'm big there. It'll be like, look, I have 15 million streams.
Yeah.
Like, I was like,
Where
oh, this
from?
person has
Yeah.
this person has 15 million legit streams. Because now, especially the big labels, they won't do I forgot how you call that, but when you go like you buy streams that they used to do back in the days. But like you pay like a click farm to just like, and those like places are just like warehouses full of phones, and they just like have like automated phones that like play your songs for like 30 seconds and then replays it and replays it and replays it. Because the thing is, if Spotify catches you doing that, you're done. So big labels won't dare to do that anymore. So what they do instead is they push a lot of promo in Southeast Asian countries and boost their numbers like that naturally, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's so yeah. I mean, that's actually crazy because like it's funny how when you first go into music, you kind of think about the market that's, I guess, they'll make you pop, and you often think American, and then you completely forget that there's a big world out there. And it's just America. Even Canadians, like we're like when you think about Drake and Justin Bieber and like like big popping artists are like, you think of how big they are in America. I was like, well, also the rest of the world knows them. If you go to Asia, everyone knows about Justin Bieber. If you go to Asia, everyone's talking about, well, at the time when Baby and all of them used to come out, like all those classic songs, like they were playing everywhere. And like billboards everywhere of him. You're like, you don't realize that the world's actually much bigger than
Oh man, yeah, and that's exciting for independent artists, I think.
Definitely an opportunity.
Yeah,
it's very much like, I mean, you should actually focus more on those countries because I guess especially the American market's very much saturated with a lot of things. And the odds of you getting the hits that you claim is like 1 in a million, probably more. So as my close off question, what does success mean to you? What is success to you?
Man,
that's my documentary end question. My end question for you too. And you see yourself as successful as well?
To me, success is where you're content. Success is balance to me. It's funny because I don't have a full answer, because I feel like my answer to what success is very different now in my mid-30s than when I started. And I feel like I gave myself, as if like I was lying to myself for a while, and I kept thinking that was still my answer. And that I feel like recently my answer changed, but I feel like I've been feeling like this new answer has actually been what I've been thinking for a while, and just like
balance.
I was kind of in denial, where I think success is when you're happy professionally and in your personal life. That's to me now in my mid-30s, where you know what I mean, like I'm at a good place in my career, is I want to be happy in all aspects of my life. Yeah, I think that's to me, that's the real definition of success, in my opinion.
So you see yourself? Do you see yourself as successful then, at the moment?
This is the most successful I've ever been.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear.
But it's an ongoing. The thing is that it's
absolutely.
It's not even. It's weird because success to me isn't even a destination. It's kind of like an ongoing thing where you always have to put in an effort to be successful. It is keeping that balance as much as possible, and it's also it's a very, there's a lot of ups and downs. So your success is also, once again, zoom out. It's also like something that like, oh, I'm going through a down right now, but if you zoom out a little bit, you're like, over the span of a year, last month's been rough, but you know what I mean? Like you're actually doing good.
Relatively, you're still on top. You're still, you got everything under control.
Yeah. And if I compare it to like if I zoom out and look at like my entire life, like this is definitely like the best it's been. Like, yeah.
Nice, cool answer. I mean, well, thank you for doing part 2 of the podcast.
Well, thank you, man. This is great.
I've a lot. I mean, honestly, of like, I was very much curious, especially from a audio, like as a career, but also as a personal endeavor to actually get to know people with more experience than I do in different fields.
Mhm.
So like, I really like to use the podcast as a way for me to not only learn, but also, you know, allow other people who get to tune in to learn as well. So thank you very much for accepting the invite second time around.
Well, thank you, man. This is great. And like it's what I like about doing like podcasts like this is that like it's like a lot of questions that you asked, I was like, man, like this is my answer. But then I think I'm like, wait, is it really?
Is that really?
Is it? You know what I mean? Like it really makes you think and there's just like it's podcasts like this, man. It's like as much of a I feel like it's a two-way learning experience.
You learn more about yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Is like ultimately speaking, like that's the reason why I also did the documentary. I did this podcast. I want to ultimately grow as a human being and allow myself to grow, so I have to be as humble as I can and say that I don't know anything, and then we'll just kind of like Joe Rogan it, if you will, kind of just like ask questions and see what we get. And then from there, we can actually reflect on it and see, okay, what does this mean? How does this work? And
I'm gonna tell you something that what you said was just perfect, because you're like, you know, for now, like I'll just like act like, well, not just act, but like, you know, I don't know anything, so like just like, but it's that's always going to be it.
Yeah,
like I've got like I've been doing this like professionally for like 12 or 13 years, and like I still think I don't know shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm always learning, and by keeping that mindset, you're going to be successful. Because at the end of the day, ego kind of blocks. For some people it works fine, but I think for the majority of people, ego will block you and block you from seeing the bigger picture and you know, focusing on what really matters. And by always having the mentality of like, and I've done martial arts when I was younger, and like having a white belt mentality is the best thing you can have. You know what I mean? Like thinking you're new every single day and keeping an open mind is that's been the key to my success. And I think it's a pretty general
rule.
Yeah, that's really good.
Nice. All right. Well, this has been a NewCrown podcast. My name is Daryl, and thanks again for my guest, Kevin Benitez, for accepting this invite. Stay tuned for the next episode for another guest, and also let me know. Send me the link of the episode you're gonna be on. I'll link it in the description so that you guys can enjoy. So see you guys next time.